LiberalViewer presents.
So, welcome to the December 31st edition of LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup. Happy New Year. Thanks for joining me. I've picked out a quick weekend's 10 best, most newsworthy clips for what should be really informative, educational media criticism and political analysis show for you all tonight. The political comedy sources again this week are just the Sunday morning news analysis shows themselves. No Saturday Night Live, no Real Time with Bill Maher this week. I do have a couple clips that I consider found political comedy that I'll start the show with before I get to the other 8, real news clips. But all the clips come from the big 5 corporate outlets of ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and Fox News, the so-called corporate media here in the United States. If you want to follow along on my list of 10 clips, I have a link down in the video description where you can look at my notes, maybe figure out what I was trying to say. It's just very sparse notes this week, I think. But the big topic is Trump year 1 and beyond. That was pretty much the topic covered by all the Sunday morning news analysis shows, not so much by Fox News Sunday or Face the Nation, just a little bit, and I'll talk about that a little later as to why I think that is and why there's some Fox News bias there. But I want to start off with, since they were doing a retrospective look back, look forward at what's going to happen in 2018. That'll be the basis of the 2 political comedy clips. First, the look forward here as to what may be the big news item coming up, hopefully, for those of us who still have a little optimism, the Democratic wave election. And you'll see how some of the Chuck Todd and one of the pundits on NBC's Meet the Press this morning reacted to Paul Ryan's description of how what he thinks of all this talk of a Democratic wave. This is about 28 seconds from Meet the Press this morning over here.
Suggesting a wave election is coming your way, that your majority is at risk. What do you make of that?
Blah, 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 blah is what I say about that stuff.
I think we're going to win the Senate and the House.
I feel very optimistic about 2018.
Well, we're going to do the blah, 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 blah. The panel is back with us, and let's talk about the blah, 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 blah in November of 2018. Welcome. Gotta love Speaker Ryan.
This is my life's work, and he's making fun of it.
He blah, blah, blah over the best part. Anyway, let's do it.
So, yeah, I guess that's the news commentary people, and one of the pundits there, Charlie Cook, defending his life's work, the blah, 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 which is kind of what I add to the clips, and I guess my commentary and criticism. Occasionally I get questions about whether I have too much commentary and criticism for the clips, whether I should play more clips and talk less. I get that comment every now and then, and I just wanted to point out that my blah, 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 blah is just about the same length as the clips. That's why I know this is going to be a shorter show. I only have about 15 minutes of clips, so it should be about a half-hour show. A lot of weeks I have like 30 or 45 minutes of clips, so that's like a 60 or 90-minute show. That's kind of how you can figure out how much blah, 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 blah there's going to be in my show, is how long the clips are. And so that was the first political comedy clip, or found political comedy clip I wanted to show this week. The second political comedy clip, actually, it's kind of comical that you have one of the top news anchors at CNN, one of the top cable news channels, and the guy who, admittedly only for 11 days, I thought it was 10, but he says 11 days, was communications director at the White House, Anthony Scaramucci, and neither of them seems to be able to tell the difference between a verb and a noun. I mean, they're making kind of a joke. Anthony Scaramucci is talking about how the mooch has become what he calls a verb, but it's actually a noun meaning a period of 11 days. And in the first part of the clip, it's not completely clear that's what they're saying. But then I edited in the very end of the interview where they make it very clear that they mean a noun, a length of time, mooch meaning a noun, but they're calling it a verb, for my second political comedy clip of the New Year's Eve edition of my LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup over here.
And you don't think that the rhetoric is coming from the fact that despite his saying that he doesn't think that he's going to be in any trouble, he is actually worried about where the investigation is going?
I really don't think he's worried about it. Yeah, you know, I've had the opportunity to be in the campaign. I was in the transition. I guess they're calling my period in the White House a mooch. It was 11 days. But
you are a verb now. Congratulations.
Yeah, I became a verb. Imagine that in 2017. We'll have to see what happens to me in 2018. But as it relates to my time with the president, my interaction with him and his staff, I'm certainly not worried about it. I know that he's not worried about it. And he said, I think, to the New York Times a couple of days ago that he expects the investigation of Mueller to treat him very fairly, and my guess is that will be the case.
You're talking about the importance of a free press.
I hope you take a mooch of vacation some point, Dan.
I want a longer vacation than that. No, I'm just kidding.
Good for you, yeah. Exactly. 2 mooches.
Exactly, a double mooch. Thank you so much.
Take care.
That was kind of a burn at the end from Dana Bash, the CNN anchor, against Anthony Scaramucci, saying that, oh, she wants a vacation longer than a mooch, which I guess is 11 days, or I thought it was 10 days, like I said. But it's also pretty clear from that clip, at least at that moment, that neither one of them seemed to recognize the difference between a noun and a verb. So I found that kind of amusing, as well as they were kind of joking back and forth about the mooch now being a noun, or they said verb, meaning 11 days or a very short period of time. And I actually Googled it. I found like one Reddit reference to a mooch being, it was like the number of seconds, but I have not found anything online where people are actually calling a mooch a unit of time. I don't think that's going to catch on in 2018. You can let me know what you think down in the comment section. Now I want to get to the actual news clips. And a couple of the shows, Meet the Press and Fox News Sunday, were both just pundit panels. So I normally don't take pundit clips, but I am going to take a couple of the news summary clips, or actually 3 from NBC's Meet the Press here. And I will have a couple clips from Fox News Sunday. I want to show how the different programs did the, inevitable show about year 1 of the Trump administration. Although it's technically January 20th, they'll have to do the whole thing over again and reassess the first year of Trump, because he didn't actually get sworn in until 20 days into January. So it's not technically year 1, but 2017 was definitely year 1 of Trump, or the year of Trump, or I don't know. Trump did definitely dominate. And I'm going to show first a few clips, like I said, from NBC's Meet the Press. This first one is this idea of year 1 of Trump, and I love how they've put in Sean Spicer and Kellyanne Conway. They did this last week. They just love to show the clips of the alternative facts clip and the inauguration clip. One of those makes it into the ABC report that I think is better and even more balanced. But first I'm going to show the 3 NBC Meet the Press clips, starting with this 1-minute clip over here. Sorry, I had a little technical difficulty getting that to play. I had the settings wrong. Here it is again.
Happy New Year's Eve to everyone. Almost from the moment he put his left hand on the Bible at his inauguration, President Trump signaled to the country that his presidency would be different. Different in ways that would thrill millions, and different in ways that would appall millions more. It began with a jarring comment about the state of the country.
This American carnage stops right here and stops right now.
Within a day, Press Secretary Sean Spicer lectured White House reporters, arguing implausibly that more people witnessed Donald Trump's inauguration than President Obama's. And a day later, here on Meet the Press, the president's counselor, Kellyanne Conway, offered this explanation.
Sean Spicer, our press secretary, gave alternative facts.
That inauguration weekend kicked off a year of friction between the White House and the press, between the president's supporters and his detractors, between liberals and conservatives, which has helped feed an uneasy sense that we as a country are more divided than we have been for decades, if not longer. Over the next hour, we're going to look back at the past year and ahead to the next. Our panel this New Year's Eve morning.
So that was basically the theme from NBC's Meet the Press. It was like the clearest of all the 5 cable news outlets, or all corporate news outlets. It was the one that most focused on this year 1, looking back and what's going to be coming up ahead. And it was all pundits, like I said. But so that introduction was nothing special, but I thought that was fair. The thing that I thought was a little unfair to Trump was this next set of promises that Trump made on the campaign trail. And Donald Trump has certainly broken a lot of promises, but you would have thought that NBC's Meet the Press could have found like one or two to throw in, you know, like, I'm going to appoint a conservative Supreme Court justice from this list of 20. That's certainly a promise he made that he kept. And or, you know, cutting regulations, or, you know, I don't know, being a white supremacist. No, you know, like being, well, I guess he didn't make that last one, but they could have found some promises that Donald Trump made that he actually kept. But you'll notice in this roundup of promises, they're all broken promises, even though they don't. That's not the way Chuck Todd introduced it on Meet the Press this morning here.
We're going to start things off by looking at some of the promises made by candidate Donald Trump and talk about whether he's been able to make good on them or not. Let's watch.
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States. $1 trillion in infrastructure investment. The tax relief will be concentrated on the working and middle class. I will be the greatest jobs president that God has ever created. Repealing and replacing Obamacare, a disaster. Save Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security without cuts. Have to do it. I pledge to every citizen of our land that I will be president for all Americans. We will build a great, great wall. And Mexico will pay for the wall.
All right, guys.
So, like I said before, I mean, it's a good roundup of broken promises by Donald Trump, but I don't think it's fair to set it up as a list of promises. Let's talk about which ones he kept and which ones he broke, which is what they did. And, I mean, some of the pundits talked about some of the things Donald Trump did that where he kept promises, but I thought that was unfair. And then for the third 1-minute clip, or this is more like 52 seconds, I think, from NBC's Meet the Press, this is a roundup of the Russia scandal and all the basically bogus things that have come out of the administration, both from Trump and from other people in the administration, from Republicans, about the lack of Russia contacts that turned out not to be true. In the final news roundup clip from Meet the Press this morning here.
There's one foreign policy issue that seems to congeal with our domestic politics, and it's Russia. Here's the best of Russia from this year.
I have nothing to do with Russia, folks, okay?
Why would there be any contacts between the campaign?
I can't think of bigger lies.
Russia is a ruse. I have nothing to do with Russia.
There is no connection. You've got Russia. If the president puts Russian salad dressing on his salad tonight, somehow that's a Russian connection.
We have no dealings in Russia. We have no projects in Russia. We have nothing to do with Russia.
Those conversations never happened.
There is no collusion between me and my campaign and the Russians.
We've been going on this Russia-Trump hoax for the better part of a year now with no evidence of anything.
There is absolutely no collusion. That has been proven.
Rich Lowry.
So, and looking back on the year, that's a lot of bogosity, that's a lot of dishonesty from the Trump administration based on a lot of the things that have come out. I mean, there's still no slam dunk evidence of collusion, but there's certainly evidence of meetings and contacts and dishonesty, and a lot of that, those clips have turned out to be not accurate from the vantage point of what we know at the end of 2017, and who knows how that little roundup of clips will look from the vantage point of what we'll know 1 year from today. I think we'll know a lot more about whether there was actually collusion and whether there's actually obstruction of justice. You know, I keep putting down in the video description all these places where you can learn more about what constitutes obstruction of justice, and I think that is going to be another big news story for 2018. Donald Trump and especially obstruction of justice, but you can let me know what you think down in the comments section. And now I just played 3 Meet the Press clips of different little roundups they did before their pundit panel or pundit panels. I'm going to compare that now to what I think is actually a better roundup of looking back on 2017 and forward to 2018, which is somewhat the theme of ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos, with, you know, permanent co-host or whatever her title is, Martha Raddatz. And the only thing is, because it's Martha Raddatz and she's so tied in heavily to the military-industrial complex, which I've talked about many times on my clip roundup, how it makes her a good source for information about the military, but also sometimes a mouthpiece for people in the military, and she certainly has some sympathy for military viewpoints. And you'll see what is different about the ABC roundup is it's not only about 45 seconds longer than those 3 NBC clips combined, but it also has a much heavier emphasis on foreign policy, which could be a big issue coming up in 2018. There's certainly things that could go very, very wrong, including North Korea, which is featured heavily in the clip you can see here.
By reflecting on the past year and anticipating the challenges ahead. There will be celebrations across the country tonight, but in this divided nation, what we celebrate will be decidedly different. Many will cheer being 1 year closer to the end of President Trump's term. Others looking forward to another year of Trump's unique, no-holds-barred style. There's not much common ground among Americans these days, but it's fair to say no one could have imagined what a wild year it's been.
I'm president. Can you believe it, right?
It's been a year like no other.
It's a whole different attitude, a whole different way.
Things got off to a rough start.
This was the largest audience to ever witness an inauguration, period.
Despite multiple White House staff shakeups,
Everyone on the president's team pictured here now gone except for the vice president.
Trump's influence on America is undeniable. His Supreme Court pick sitting on the bench.
And I got it done in the first 100 days. That's even nice.
The biggest tax overhaul in more than 3 decades signed into law.
That's your bill.
And major regulations reversed in a crusade Trump has vowed to carry on. The president also waded into culture wars.
Get that son of a bitch off the field right now. Out. He's fired. He's fired.
Often fanning the flames of division.
I think there's blame on both sides. I have a running war with the media. They are among the most dishonest human beings on earth.
He fell short on his major campaign promise to repeal and replace Obamacare.
We're not getting the job done. And I'm not going to blame myself, I'll be honest.
An agenda often sidetracked by questions of Russian influence and the shadow of the Mueller investigation.
How many times do I have to answer this question?
Can you just say
Russia
yes or no
is
on
a
it?
ruse. I have nothing to do with Russia.
And on the world stage, Trump led the country to look inward.
I'm not, and I don't want to be, the president of the world. I'm the president of the United States. And from now on, it's going to be America first.
But the president will carry with him a number of global challenges in 2018, chief among them North Korea.
They will be met with fire and fury.
Trump's tough talk backed up last week by new UN sanctions, a move called an act of war by North Korea. Another test, China. Will he continue to treat China as an ally to prevent war with North Korea or an adversary on trade? On Iran, Trump must decide next month whether to make good on his threat to end the Iran nuclear deal. And the Russian threat looms. Reports out this week show Russia will continue to target the 2018 and 2020 U.S. elections with online information warfare. While Trump can claim some success in the fight against the Islamic State,
we have dealt ISIS one devastating defeat after another.
What's left of the insurgent force is pushing into parts of Syria and outside the Middle East. And of course, ISIS continues to inspire those lone wolves here at home and around the globe. So how will Trump handle those challenges, both domestic and abroad, in the new year? Joining me now, former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff under Presidents George W. Bush and Barack Obama, Admiral Mike Mullen. Good morning.
And I don't have any clips of Admiral Mike Mullins. I mean, I guess he's a pundit, not a newsmaker at this point, although he's a very knowledgeable pundit, having been chairman of the Joint Chiefs under George W. Bush and under Barack Obama for a time. But it also is what shows what I was talking about before. I showed the clip that Martha Raddatz has really good military sources and is close to those military sources. I thought the foreign policy addition to the looking forward to 2018 Roundup in the ABC clip was really good, and even the domestic part was just as good as what you saw from NBC. So ABC wins this week as the best news summary for the topic of the week, which is Donald Trump year one and looking and beyond, looking forward. The next clip I'm going to show is actually the CNN State of the Union Roundup, and this is less than a minute long. The State of the Union is making resolutions. That seems a little bit hokey. This is Dana Bash. I showed her earlier talking to Anthony Scaramucci from later in the program. This is the very beginning of the program, and it does talk about the same themes you saw from NBC and ABC, much shorter space. The one thing I really like about this is they point out something that CBS's Face the Nation also pointed out, is that Donald Trump spent an ample amount of time during his vacation playing golf, which is something Donald Trump does not want you to know, but it's right at the beginning of the program here in the first 1 minute of CNN's State of the Union this morning with Dana Bash over here.
Hello, I'm Dana Bash in for Jake Tapper in Washington, where the State of our Union is making resolutions. After enjoying ample time on the golf course during his holiday break in Florida, President Trump is heading into a critical election year with a schedule that is already filling up. Shortly after returning to Washington, the president plans to huddle at Camp David with the House Speaker Paul Ryan and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to strategize for the new year. And the president is already expressing optimism that he can be a deal maker in 2018. He told the New York Times, "We can do bipartisan health care, we can do bipartisan infrastructure, and we can do bipartisan DACA." Also already on the books for January, the president's first formal physical examination and his first State of the Union address. Joining me now to discuss the president.
Anthony Scaramucci. Of course, I showed that clip already, but it was actually a very wide-ranging interview in both before commercial and after commercial. As you saw, I just showed like two 30-second clips edited together. So if you want to see the whole thing, like most of or almost all the clips I show, you can go down to the video description, and there's a link to all of the big 5 corporate outlets. Sometimes you might have to have cable to watch the full episode, but there are usually at least clips down there. And those 3 outlets basically took on this year one of Trump topic, and CBS's Face the Nation and Fox News Sunday didn't do it as much. They actually both focus more on the popular or the protests in the streets of Iran, and I'm not going to show how CBS's Face the Nation did that, although I do have a Face the Nation clip as the very last clip, Lindsey Graham answering 3 quick questions in a very disciplined way about some upcoming 2018 issues. But before I get to that, I want to show 2 clips from Fox News Sunday showing sort of their alternate universe in a way. I think maybe they didn't want to do a looking back on the first year of Trump because it's hard to do it without seeing many, many disasters. Although the second clip I'm going to show actually is the panel talking a little bit about Charlottesville, which was one of the disasters, which they had one Democratic guest on, Elleithee, because it was an all-panel show, who pointed out how it was a low point where Trump lost people who he's never going to get back. But then they had this right-wing guy, Michael Needham, on. Well, that's the second clip I'm going to show. First, I want to show you the beginning, the introduction to Fox News Sunday and how they set up the news stories. Very different from what you saw from NBC and ABC and even CNN. They barely really talked about looking back on Trump or looking forward, even though it's December 31st and the New Year's Eve edition of all these shows. Here's Dana Perino, former press secretary for George W. Bush, filling in as the host of Fox News Sunday this morning and introducing the topics over here.
In for Chris Wallace. President Trump warns Iran the world is watching as protesters rise up against the regime.
We'll have a live report on the wave of rallies, the reaction from the White House, and how it's raising the stakes.
Then lawmakers face a host of issues when they return to Washington as the clock ticks down to 2018.
I really do believe we're going to have a lot of bipartisan work done, and maybe we start with infrastructure.
But what are the odds Republicans and Democrats can find common ground?
We hope the future will be different, and our Republican friends realize their legislative and political goals are better served by bipartisanship and compromise rather than gridlock and strife.
We'll spend the hour with our Sunday panel. Bruce Melman, Marie Harf, Michael Needham, and Mo Elleithee. Plus, from natural disasters to the opioid epidemic, we'll find out the state of the nation's most pressing crises. All right now on Fox News Sunday.
And hello again.
And you saw how they set up the news topics, but you see those last couple clips at the end, from natural disasters to the opioid crisis, and then sandwiched right in the middle there was a very brief clip of Charlottesville, you know, where there were the alt-right protesters in Charlottesville, Virginia, and it ended up with a woman being killed by this white supremacist who rammed his car into a crowd, and it was basically the low point of the Trump administration, I think. And to the credit of Fox News Sunday, they actually started a discussion on their panel about that. And they had one Democrat on saying that Trump lost a lot of people, like I said before I showed that last clip. But then they had this guy, Michael Needham, the right-wing Tea Party guy, who made a pretty despicable comparison by the end of this 2.5-minute clip. Also, I noticed Dana Perino tries to switch as quickly as possible away from this really valid criticism from Mo Elleithee, I think is how you say his name. This one of the few Democrats who appears on Fox News and Fox News Sunday. And he talks about how bad Charlottesville was, and you'll see Dana Perino tries to switch away as quickly as possible to... but yeah, Trump's really right about the NFL protests, though, and then you'll see the despicable comment from Michael Needham at the end that I'll discuss with you after we watch this 2.5-minute clip together over here.
FEMA's going to come over here with the efforts to rebuild.
We can be the generation that ends the opioid epidemic.
That's a look back at some of the big stories of 2017 that will have an impact in the new year. And we're back now with some bonus time with the panel. Mo, let me start with you, and I want to ask you about the president and Charlottesville, because that seemed to be this a big seminal moment of the year. And is that continuing to drive the frustration, the disapproval of the president from Democrats mostly?
I think it's a big part of it. I think it was one of the greatest missed opportunities of this administration. The way the president failed to seize the opportunity to unite the country against hate, against racism, against white nationalism, and allowed himself, whether it was in his heart or just rhetorical blundering, allowed himself to appear to the white nationalists, to the racists, as their champion, was a hugely problematic thing that I think set the tone, and any hope he had of reconciling with a huge portion of the electorate, I think, ended right there.
And yet, Michael, the president did seem to have his finger on the pulse of how people felt about the protests of the anthem at the NFL. And he really drove that home as a cultural issue.
Yeah, he did. And look, there are real, this is a nation that's having a civic breaking apart. And that's a tragedy, and that's something that's bad for the country. It's indefensible that we can't, as a nation, agree that it's unacceptable for people in inner cities not to feel like the police can be there for them. It's also unacceptable that cops feel that they have to go out on the street, and if they make the wrong decision in a split second, they could be tarred a racist. And so we need to find a way as a nation to come together to have a civic reawakening where we go forward. And there's no doubt that the president has not healed in some of those ways. There's no doubt that Barack Obama missed opportunities.
Yeah.
I mean, lighting up the White House in a rainbow flag the day that something that was deeply disturbing to half of the country happened at the Supreme Court was not something that brought people together. And so we need to step back and figure out as a country, how do we unite? How do we...
That was a terrible comparison. Lighting up the White House in rainbow colors when the Supreme Court recognized marriage equality. I mean, I don't know why it is that when certain people are treated equally, that means that there are other people in the country who think that they've lost something. That seems to be a driving force behind some Trump voters, that, you know, that's Make America Great Again, back before we lost our privileges that other people didn't have. Like, I guess in some ways, does that make them the privileges more valuable? I don't know. It's very sad, and that is like a viewpoint that nobody really in any way refuted that or even reacted to that anywhere in the pundit panel. It was pretty sad, but at least Fox News Sunday did raise the issue of Charlottesville. I have to give them credit for that. You can let me know what you think of the comparison that Michael Needham made, and whether that's Fox News bias or not. Let me know down in the comment section. I have one more clip I'm going to show, and then I'll have a quick bonus Sandy clip at the end before I sign off for New Year's. This is the clip I promised of Lindsey Graham over on CBS's Face the Nation, where they did start off with a big report on Iran, and they did focus on that at the beginning of Face the Nation. And Major Garrett, who used to be on Fox News, was the guest host this week. But I don't think it was as biased as Fox News. And they did do some of the looking back and looking forward. And this is a really, I think you can actually give credit to Lindsey Graham for being like a really disciplined guest. He's been on these shows so many times. Not so much to Major Garrett for doing this lightning round set of questions, where they do that on a lot of the shows, where they try to get quick answers on topics, and the guests usually don't comply. But Lindsey Graham actually gives 3 quick questions on healthcare, John McCain, and immigration, or DACA, the Deferred Action on Childhood Arrivals, and those are all issues that may come up in 2018 that I will talk about with you after we watch that final clip, other than the bonus Sandy clip, together for the program over here.
2 minutes and 3 topics, Senator.
Okay,
healthcare.
we can do this.
Healthcare, DACA, and how is Senator McCain?
Senator McCain is in rehab. He's coming back in January. We need his voice now more than ever. Healthcare, there's a debate between federalism and socialism. I don't know of one Republican who wants to repair Obamacare. I don't know one Democrat who wants to replace it. So we're not going to come together on healthcare. On DACA, there is a deal to be had. The dreamers can have the life they've dreamed of if the Democrats and Republicans can give. We need the wall, not a complete 2,200-mile wall. We need border security. You marry that up with the DREAM Act. There's a deal to be had on immigration, and I want to do it in January. I don't want to wait till March.
We've got a minute and a half. That was a lightning round, and you did a spectacular job. So,
okay.
The New York...
So that was a pretty good job of giving short, succinct answers, and I don't know if it's an accurate prediction as to what's going to happen on immigration, or that healthcare is not going to happen, but immigration might happen, using the parameters that Lindsey Graham gave there. You can let me know what you think down in the comment section. I've been watching the live viewers along the way. I did see this one comment about collusion, which is something I talked about earlier, whether Russia collusion, or I was talking about obstruction of justice, but also collusion. This is from, I think it's New Eng Research, saying collusion is legal, treason's not. Actually, it's the opposite. Treason is defined in the Constitution, the highest law of the land. It's actually very difficult to prove, because it's actually, you have to prove it as defined in the Constitution. Collusion is not a crime. Obstruction of justice is a crime. I also have a link down in the video description to receiving something of value from a foreign national in a political campaign. That's not collusion, but if you got like opposition research from the Russians and didn't pay for it, from even not just the Russian government, but from any Russian foreign national other than like a legal resident of the United States. If you look at the link down in the video description, that's also a crime, not collusion. And then conspiracy to commit one of these other crimes, that's not collusion, but conspiracy is a crime, as long as you're agreeing do a series of acts that include this crime. But anyway, that's what I wanted to say about that comment. Thank you, New Eng Research, for that comment. Thanks to all my live viewers and my recorded show viewers. I appreciate if you give me a thumbs up, if you give me a supportive comment, and also, of course, I appreciate the patrons on Patreon. There's a link down in to my Patreon page in the video description. This week I will be giving out, this week I'll start giving out these ACLU constitutions to people who pledge $10 a month or more. And then I'll also be giving out these stickers, like this one you can see here, for people who pledge $5 or more. And you can also see those in my bonus Sandy clip. This is Sandy finally. It took her a long time to lie down. I actually had to edit this clip to show how long it took her to lie down. In the 15-second clip, I will end as the final clip for 2017 tonight over here. So, Happy New Year. Sandy wishes you Happy New Year. I hope you appreciated the 10 clips I picked out and all the clips I picked out for you in 2017 and my media criticism and political commentary. I appreciated all of you who joined me for the live show and the recorded show, gave me your comments, your thoughts, your opinions, and I guess we'll be watching the Big Five corporate outlets and some political comedy outlets for 2018 together and for the foreseeable future. And until then, I guess, until next year, I guess I will be seeing all of you around the internet.